Many, many years ago, I worked for this company. There was 6 of us, and we all reported to this woman. She was a fantastic boss, a fantastic lady, very adept, very competent. But one thing about her is that she liked to have these meetings. But they were kind of useless meetings in that we didn't really discuss anything. We didn't really solve any problems. It was just her telling us information and us listening. Things that could have been done over email. But for some reason, I suspected that she just liked to be in a position where she could talk and people could listen to her, because that's a pleasing thing for humans. We like to be in charge of a group. It feels good. And what made matters even worse was frequently she would buy us lunch for these lunch meetings. And so we'd have to spend the first 15, 20 minutes eating lunch, listening to her talk about non-work stuff, and then listen to her talk for another 20, 30, 45 minutes about work stuff. It was a huge waste of time. So I decided to try an experiment. While we were eating lunch, I told her about a story where I used to work, where there was this other guy. And he was telling me a bunch of stuff about this company and how this company doesn't have meetings. And he was telling me about somebody else that he used to know at another company that he worked at before. And at this company, they used to have meetings, but everybody complained about these meetings. And one guy in this story told something to another guy in this story, and he said, "These meetings are a waste of time. Nobody likes them. You should just send out the information in email, and that would make everybody happier." And so I tried that, and it worked. The next week, we stopped having meetings. And the funny thing is she acted like it was her idea to stop having meetings. And so how did this happen? What did I do? The first thing I did was I used a technique called nested loops. This is where you start a story, then you break the story off halfway through, you start another story, then you break this story off halfway through, then you start the middle story, then you finish the second story, then you finish the first story. And in this middle story is when you deliver the techniques. And in this particular example, I started one story about a friend and another story about his friend at another company. And I had one guy talking to another guy, and this creates another technique, or this brings up another technique called blurred realities, which is kind of automatic if you use nested loops. Blurred realities is when you're trying to listen to these nested loop stories and you're not quite sure who is talking to whom, what level of the story you're in, because the stories are purposely set up so when you shift from one story to another, the listener is not quite sure they're in a new story or if they're in the familiar story or the previous story. And so blurred reality is when you hear a quote from somebody and you're not quite sure who's saying what to whom. And the quotes pattern is when you actually quote one person in this story saying something to another person in this story, but you're saying the same thing. So in this story over here that was 2 stories deep, one character looked at another character and said, "These meetings are a waste of time. These meetings are a waste of time." You could give the same information through email. And this was one character saying this to the other character. Then I finished the story up, and I finished this story up. And so by the time I finished, it was kind of a foggy memory, that statement, "These meetings are a waste of time." And so she didn't really remember it as me telling that to her. It was just a kind of a vague idea that was a remnant of these stories. And that vague idea stuck in her brain, and that's why she thought it was her idea. So this is a fantastic technique if you want to deliver a quote to somebody, if you want to deliver information to somebody, but you're not quite confident to do it from you to them. You put it inside of a story. You use nested loops, you use blurred realities, and you use the quotes pattern. And if you're going to use the quotes pattern, you can also use embedded commands. Because when you use embedded commands within the quotes pattern, it'll have a much more profound effect on your actual listener. So you can try this out. It's like the other day, I was having lunch with a friend of mine, this woman that I hadn't seen in a long time. And she was telling me about her new job at this chiropractor. And her boss is really, really proactive in making sure all their employees are very, very equipped to talk to the customers about whatever they need to talk to the customers about. And she's always going to these seminars. And she was telling her about a seminar she went to a couple of years ago. Not really a seminar, more like an expo, where they have all these alternative health people selling all these alternative health stuff. And there's this organization there that sells products to healthcare practitioners, non-mainstream healthcare practitioners, to improve communication skills. Because when you improve communication skills, you can be much more proactive in helping people solve their problems. Because if you help people solve their problems, they'll be much more likely to buy whatever you're selling. and she was telling her that we sell products that can help you become much more persuasive. Not only will our products help you to become more persuasive, but you don't really need to think very much about what you're saying. You don't really need to pay attention to all these language patterns and hypnotic storytelling methods, because our products will program these into you on a very deep level. So all you really need to do is have an intention in mind of what you want the person to do that you're talking to, and just start talking. And just start talking like you normally talk. Just start telling stories like you normally tell. And within these stories are a lot of subconscious techniques that you will be able to use to become much more persuasive, that you will be able to use to become much more seductive. And not only will you become more persuasive, but you'll be able to increase your social skills, increase your social network, because it's all about making network and connections. Because if you're a chiropractor, you have to pretty much advertise by word of mouth. And so when people come into your shop, you need to make sure you understand what their problems are and help them solve their problems and convince them subconsciously to tell all their friends to come into your chiropractor shop. This is why these products are so well, because they help you do this. And she was telling me she's really, really excited about this new job. She's much more excited about this new job than she has been in a long time. So I was glad to see her again. But if you want to use these techniques to become more persuasive, just practice nested loops, blurred reality, quotes pattern, and if you're feeling up to it, embedded commands within the quotes pattern. That will make you much more persuasive and seductive, and you'll be able to deliver pretty much any information you want to anybody, and they'll remember it as their idea. So try this out and let me know what you think in the comments. If you got any questions, ask me in the comments. Or if you'd like to learn more about how to do this, how to subconsciously program yourself to become much more persuasive and seductive, check out the links below. Thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.